Here we are together again, episode 7, Coach to Influence, where I bring together some of the greatest sales leaders working in the field today to share what works, what doesn't, what makes them so very special. And I am thrilled to have Corentin with me today. I know I butchered it. I'll let you fix it. Who really takes intentional leadership and drive to whole new levels. And I'm excited to talk to him today around what intention really looks like rather than what a lot of people are seeing out there, which is a lot of smoke and mirrors. So why don't you take some time, introduce yourself, my friend, and let's talk and dive into leading with intention.
So thank you for having me. And the name is just fine. It's Corentin in French, which is impossible here in the US. So any form of Corentin works just fine as long as I recognize my name.
Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So as I just mentioned, I am originally French, which means my entire family is in France. Right now I live in California, but it was quite a journey. It started really when I was a child because as a family, when I was barely 7 years old, we moved to Southern California for just 2.5 years, which means I showed up as this French kid. I didn't speak a word of English, and I went to American school, public school down the street, and it was the best experience that I could have hoped for. I became very American in my way to live, think, process the world. I learned English in a couple weeks, couple months, and that really defined who I am today. And so after 2.5 years, we went back to France, and I went through school, middle school, high school, studied business and engineering, went back to the US for just a couple months at the end of my studies. And this is when I realized this was home. America was home. And so I started my career in Paris for about 5 years as an SDR, really, and then made my way up. And then about 5 years in, I was leading a big chunk of the enterprise business for Cisco Security in Paris. And I had a phenomenal life in Paris, but it wasn't me. I knew that my dream life was abroad and specifically in the US because that's where I was the best version of myself and growing the fastest towards the person I wanted to become. So long story short, I set things in motion to move to the US. And now it's incredibly challenging because I didn't have a green card, I wasn't a citizen. So you have to be exponentially a better fit than anyone else in order to justify bringing you over from halfway across the world, sponsoring you with a visa and so on. Long story short, made it happen. Tremendously grateful to a leader who gave me a shot at my dream job. So September of 2019, I sold nearly everything I had in Paris and moved to New York City with 2 suitcases and 2 boxes to lead the cybersecurity business for Cisco, specifically for the top Wall Street banks. So Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and so on. I had the time of my life. It was home from day one, almost, both from a professional perspective, but also personal perspective. I met my wife a few months in. I met some of my closest friends to date, and we tripled the business in 2 years, largest cybersecurity deal in the world at the time. And then I made a very, very intentional move into leadership, also because I wanted to build teams and cultures that I wish I always had in my teams. And so that's how I led 2 teams within Cisco, a phenomenal time. And then just a couple months ago, I made another very intentional pivot, another major change in my life, a couple years after moving to California, to join a startup and go early stage and build. And that's where I am today. So I lead our go-to-market at FISO Trust, where we automate through AI the entire third-party, fourth-party risk management for security teams. So here we are, and I couldn't be happier.
That's great to hear. You had mentioned a moment ago teams that you would wished you had been on.
Yes.
Or atmospheres, I guess, that you wish you had been a part of. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's very specific. It's almost hard to describe without being a little bit cheesy, but
Be cheesy. That's
let's
what we're
give it
here
a
for.
try.
And you're French, so you guys invented the best cheeses. So you should be able to go to town.
And I still eat a lot of it.
As you should.
So what does that look like? I always like to think of it as a combination of incredible skill and that kind of character, hunger, drive, creativity, magic that is in the day-to-day in the team. And that starts by being incredibly intentional about who we hire. And so I always say it's really easy to find incredible skill. Like work with a good recruiter, you'll have 10 exceptional resumes by the end of the day in terms of skill. However, finding that alignment with the culture, with not just coming in and being a mercenary and executing, but really being a part of building the company as if it were your own and going all in terms of creativity, in terms of collaborating with the rest of the team to create repeatable recipes for success, like spotting a problem one evening and coming back the next morning, presenting something like, here's what I thought of this morning that we could implement to address this challenge that we have. This is the kind of magic in the teams that I love and that I work to implement. And then we can go a little bit deeper into how I do that. And I couldn't be more.
Yeah, let's do that because I mean you're searching for that ever elusive X factor in a rep. So how do you look for it? And then more importantly, once they decide to work with you and you decide to work with them, how do you further cultivate it?
Right. So it starts with our principles, 7 principles. And this is something that one of my mentors really taught me and that Ray Dalio implemented at Bridgewater. And so it's 7 principles that are really core to who I am and that have almost by extension become the principles for our teams. And it starts with raising the bar, committing to
Okay.
excellence. It's as simple as that. Committing to excellence, raising the bar, executing, doing everything we say we're going to do every single time. And while that may seem simple, in the execution, if you start doing that every day, it's very powerful. Another one of our principles is super simple as well. Show up on time or give a heads up and be prepared every single time. And that's incredibly powerful, both internally and with our customers, which means in an interview, if we meet someone who's not prepared as we would be prepared for a customer call, we sometimes cut that interview short just a couple minutes in because we know it's not aligned with our principles. And other principles that are incredibly important to us are taking care of ourselves and of each other. So taking care of ourselves, we're accountable for our own health, our own happiness, our sleep, our food, our exercise routine. And that means it's in our values, in our principles to block time in the calendar, to have a good lunch, to be refueled for the afternoon and not get out of the park. It's in our principles to block time and be proud of it, to go work out and come back ready to break walls. It's in our principles to take care of each other when someone is sick, when someone is going through something personal. I have your back. I'll take your meetings, even though they're not my accounts. This is the kind of behavior that I see within the team where I stand back and I look at the Slack messages and I'm like, this is the kind of magic we want in the team. And so this is also how we manage performance, because sometimes when there is not alignment with these principles, we either have to realign and get commitment towards those principles or also decide to part ways because that alignment is not there anymore. So it's a lot in the accountability and in the execution. And that means me as a leader, I need to embody those principles every day and lead by example. Otherwise, it'll just be writing on the wall. But ask anyone in our team and they will tell you the kind of alignment that we have and how crazy intentional. I think I'm driving a couple recruiters crazy right now, but how crazy we are about the the culture in our team and the kind of magic and how high we set the bar at all levels. In a way, we operate at super high RPMs with a high degree of caring.
Nice. Okay, so those are three pretty awesome: committing to excellence, being prepared, taking care of ourselves and each other. Continue, please. People need to hear this. The young leaders of today need to hear how this is done right. And thank you so much coming. Obviously, super prepared to do this.
Yeah, of course. I'll actually pull up our principles and I'll read them to you precisely one by one. So the first one I mentioned, strive for excellence and execute. Second one, care deeply about what we do. Like give a damn. I'll just say pardon my French.
Part of my
Third
okay,
one,
third one.
think customer first. Now, that's just 3 words, but the meaning behind that is really, really important, especially when we think customer success or even ahead of a customer meeting. It's not just think customer first. It's what does that person's life likely look like in their environment, in their organization? What is going to be their agenda in terms of how will this be a win for them? What lens do they look at this through? What's happening? What is the impact for them of implementing this solution or this program within the organization? So it's really putting ourselves in our customers' shoes and in our company's shoes second, almost. Never start with the product, the solution. It's always about the customer first. Same thing. We know these things, but it's in the embodiment of it that it really makes
A
it.
ton of people talk about this, so I love to hear you talking about the actual execution of this.
Yeah. Fourth, enjoy the journey. And this is something that I underestimated earlier in my career, but enjoying the journey as if we're building the good old times right now as a team, and we're enjoying every single day. And that's critically important because when you're enjoying the journey and you see them, you see the people, when you look at them, you're like, they're like a fish in the water. They're really enjoying the journey. There's a high degree of correlation between that and having a crazy level of impact. You're usually at your very best when there's alignment between what you do and who you are, and when there's so much coherence that you're driving a crazy amount of impact while enjoying the journey. So enjoying the journey is so critical, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure. But the fifth one I mentioned, be prepared and on time, or give a heads up, super important. Become the best version of you, and we're here to grow together, and that's also what we look for in candidates and who's joining our team. Will this be an opportunity for everyone to grow, myself included? Will I learn from that person? We're all looking for this. And then the last one being, we take care of ourselves and of each other. Critically important. And I couldn't be happier to see that going on every single day in the org, because we push hard. We push really hard. So that's critically important. So there you go. 7 principles. And when I joined Viso, we did a sales kickoff couple weeks in. It was so important to get everyone together in person. And so I actually started the sales kickoff around aligning on those principles and defining them and aligning. And then it was a beautiful moment asking the question, do we commit to living and standing by those principles? And the entire room was like, yes, let's go. And that was incredibly special. And
talk about some intoxicating energy, man. Wow. So how do you coach to these 7 principles? It's one thing to say them. It's one thing to pontificate and prophesize to your team what this looks like. But when you're in the trenches, the daily grind, how do you coach to things like this?
Yeah. Well, first off, as I mentioned, I need to embody them. So that's on me, first of all. And then it's also asking in a kind way the challenging questions. I love radical candor as well. Care deeply and personally, like with love, yet also challenge directly and call out when we need to raise the bar, when something that we're crafting needs to be improved before it's ready to be in front of a customer because we want to wow them. So it's asking those questions of, are we really thinking about the customer here, or are we thinking about our own solution and the data dump that we want to give them? So in the day-to-day, it's on the one-to-ones, it's on the team calls where we review opportunities. It's as we show up on time, it's like, all right, like 5 minutes in, no news, what's happening? Like, let's make sure we give a heads up. But really, right now, I don't really need to coach on these anymore because it's embodied within the team. And I'm actually seeing other team members who've been in the team now for a couple months together. As new people come in, they actually coach on those principles, and they become culture carriers in a way. They carry our culture because there's this degree of passion for who we are.
So listen, you can't discount the value of a team that leads by example and coaches simply for the sake of making one another better. Those 7 principles, I think you need to publish those and speak to those quite a bit more often, especially on the execution side. And I love the fact that you're getting that buy-in early during the interview process, because I've always been a believer that that's where you're going to see their very best, if not their very worst. I'm curious, with all of this intention, Was there ever guidance or advice you received from somebody that set this path for you?
Very much. And it's still ongoing. I'm 10 years into my career. And at the very beginning, especially, I've had leaders and mentors who I've learned from beyond just from a business perspective, but also from a life perspective, from what does a dream personal like love relationship look like? What kind of harmony can exist out there between partners? I've learned a ton from mentors far beyond, again, just work. And I would encourage any early in career person to seek out mentors, not necessarily formally, but just people that they see that I don't want to say admire because I don't want to give the impression that you need to give away your sovereignty, but you see someone and you're like, I like that level of energy. I like how they talk about the balance that they have in their lives. I love how they approach this and seek to understand how they got there. What's their philosophy around it? Usually it's so intentional that those people will be very happy to have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Even though they seem inaccessible, it's actually really to get someone who reaches out to them in such a thoughtful way and precise way. Like, I want to understand how you learned this, how you got there. What's your philosophy around that? And usually you could find 20 minutes in the calendar, even if it takes a couple weeks. And that's always how I've operated. And that's still how I operate. I seek out people who are a couple steps ahead of me, not just in business, but in general, and seek to learn from them. And that also means podcasts and books. And that's gold
It
to
certainly is.
to tap into that kind of content, especially as you're on a steep growth trajectory and you want to accelerate. It's absolute gold. So I would highly recommend to anyone to consume the books, consume the podcast, and then reach out to those people that maybe you've heard on a podcast and you want to learn more from them and see how their journey can apply to yours because you're maybe a decade behind them.
Listen, I've got 3 times as long as you do in sales. I still have mentors. There's still individuals that I reach out to. Maybe, what was the word you used? Maybe emulate is the best word.
Yeah,
Best practices that you
I love
want to
that.
incorporate into your own toolbox. And I know you do this, but maybe to some of the younger sales leaders that are going to be listening in, don't forget that it's also an opportunity to give back. Somebody doesn't need to be on your team. They don't need to be part of your organization where they're dropping time into your calendar. I know our success comes from those that invested in us.
Absolutely.
And people tend to forget that your success also comes from the investments that you make.
Absolutely. And I love to learn from earlier in career folks as well, just as I love to learn from mentors and gather as many perspectives as possible because we really learn in both directions and we need
Yeah.
to pay it forward.
Especially with the impact and the presence of technology. I mean, I've built 20 orgs from the ground up, and more often than not, new tech stacks, new techniques,
Yeah,
new ways of just getting the day-to-days done come from the youngest people on your team, and
bingo.
tools you would never even fathom a newer, unique way of getting something done.
Absolutely.
So you've given a lot of good advice. Well, from this conversation, you shared with us some of the great advice and guidance that you've received. What's some of the better guidance you've had to give to struggling sellers?
That's a tough
But
one.
before the jokes, I got to make you do some thinking.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
before
yeah.
we get into the fun stuff, I got to make you.
Yeah, that's a tough one because it ties into less fun aspects of the role where sometimes there's no alignment between or there's dwindling alignment between who they are and the role. And so sometimes that means very transparent conversations around a fit that is less and less there. However, based on who they are, they could contribute some incredible magic to another environment. And so giving that feedback is tough. Yet at the same time, I've had so many sellers afterwards who told me it was tough in the moment, but then you were right. It wasn't the right fit. I realized it afterwards, especially after joining a role in an organization that was actually extremely aligned with who I am, and now I'm crushing it. And so sometimes you have to accept that the environment that you're in is not fully aligned, and you need to make a risky, uncertain move, perhaps painful, in order to get to your environment where you're really going to shine.
Okay. I can live with that.
Yeah. And then I would also say, especially on the leader side, there's tremendous power in being brutally realistic and also brutally optimistic. And that means you may be going through some challenges as an organization, as a team. Maybe something's broken, something doesn't work, you're churning customers left and right. However, if you acknowledge those and with the team, you set the vision saying, all right, we're going to address these one by one. And here's what's on the other side. Once we address those, we are going to have so much demand that we're going to be struggling to keep up. And so it's so important from my perspective to set the vision. And it always makes me think of this line by this French author, Saint-Exupéry, who said something like, if you want to build a ship, don't go ahead and drum up people and ask them to go get wood and give them tasks and work. Teach them and show them to long for the immensity of the sea. And that's when the magic will happen. So it's the same thing in business and in sales, I would say.
That's a great line. Long for the immense. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, there are some lucky sellers that get to call you boss.
We'll all be building the ship together.
Nice.
And going through the rough days, enjoying the journey together because we also know what's on the other side.
You know I love shamelessly promoting great sales reps. Do you want to shout out any of these shipbuilders that are longing for the immensity of the sea right now on your team?
Yeah, I mean, Justin Mullen in our team, Nikki Lang, extraordinary, Alex Marino, who just joined us last week.
That's right. You work with Nikki Lang.
Exactly.
She is one of my most favorite sellers. Wow, you do have a lucky team indeed, my man.
Yeah, she was actually my first call when I joined Viso. I thought, okay, what does our dream team look like? And I had the opportunity to hire someone in the East, and Nikki was on the top of my list. She was my very first call. And I couldn't be happier to work with Nikki, Justin, Alex, and then we're continuing to expand the team.
Nice. And you were on a podcast with Nikki recently, right?
Yes. So she started a podcast. Her first weekend, she said, hey, how about we start a podcast and interview some of our most inspiring, some of our most awesome customers who have so much to share. And so we started doing that. And then right before our first guest came into the studio, we actually did a little bit of warm up and actually shot a couple clips.
Nice. Small world.
And I love your podcast as well.
Oh, you say
the conversations we get to have are just awesome.
They are. I learn a lot from leaders. I'm hoping that we're passing things along that help the new sales leaders, kids that are about to become one. But let's have a little fun now. So it's deal day. Got to get on the phone. It's time for a pitch. What's the pump up song playing in the background?
Ooh, two options. There's either the high energy route, like
final. All right, it's here. High energy. Let's go.
Final Countdown, Europe. Cool one. David Guetta, the French DJ, actually did a remix. That's really pretty awesome. So that one hits really hard.
David Rita, yeah. Final Countdown.
Yeah. And then there's the other route, which is deep focus and meditation. And that can be classical music, it can be Mélan Moritz, very soulful music. Get in the deep focus, sharp mind, grounded energy. Can be either one of those tracks, depending on the meeting and the desired outcome.
Okay.
How about you? What's the high energy?
It's funny. Final Countdown used to be a big one for years. I've also been known to do Eye of the Tiger.
Okay. Very cool.
And in my more docile moments, I know you might find this incredibly difficult to believe, but the Overture of 1812.
Oh, Tchaikovsky.
You know, you get all the cannons going off.
Very cool.
It's nice because it starts smooth. You can meditate, get a little balance.
Builds up.
Have all the winds, and then the trumpets come, and like you can't. Sometimes it's tough to leave that without big smile on your face. I apologize because it does depict a stunning loss of Napoleon and the French, but that is what it is. Okay, so We've got Final Countdown. We've got some classical music. So, as a sales leader, and you're on LinkedIn, you're on social media. I'm sure Nikki gets this as well. But what's the sales buzzword happening right now that you wish would disappear forever?
I don't know if it's a word, but it's definitely the practice of pitch slapping. Like someone adds you on LinkedIn, right away sends you a DM with basically a sales pitch. That is definitely something I would not recommend. It's actually triggering to some people. Like
Yeah.
it's irritating. It's disrespectful almost. However, I see some brilliant reps start engaging with contacts, with, you can call them prospects, but then it can lead to anything. It can lead to partnerships. It can lead to them becoming investors. It's simply starting to connect, interacting, commenting, thoughtful color on their posts, starting to get noticed, starting a conversation, and then perhaps that leads to more of a business-minded sales conversation, but really thoughtful conversation.
Engagement. Yeah.
That's powerful, and that's far more elevated and elegant, I would say, than pitch slapping.
It's far more lasting too, because you build that foundation of trust. You develop the foundation for credibility and rapport, which is, at the end of the day, which allows you to start that awareness journey, but more importantly, down the road, build a real relationship with these prospects. I tell sellers all the time, you have to be more real now than ever.
Bingo.
Back when I started, you could be as fake as a $3 bill. You can have a persona on the phone and put yourself off in a certain way. And buyers are far more educated nowadays. They see right through that nonsense. So I love that you talk to building authenticity with these individuals, because it truly separates pros from pretenders nowadays.
Absolutely. And you got to build authenticity with yourself, first of all. And that's a deep foundational work that you have to do for yourself so that it shines through. But then LinkedIn is an incredible way to showcase your brand. And I mean that in the most positive way. Your unique personality, your unique approach to things. People usually want to hear about how you do things, especially since there are a lot of earlier in career folks who want to learn from people who are maybe a little bit more senior along the track that they want to pursue. Or maybe it's buyers who want to get those 40-second video snippets of what just happened in the world, and they want to get your perspective on it because you have an educated one given your role and what you sell. And so the more you do this, the more relevant you're going to be and the more opportunities you're going to create for yourself. And as buyers look at your LinkedIn, you're going to be someone they want to interact with, or maybe even know before they've even spoken to you because they've seen your content. And so that's an incredible investment. Just like the power of visuals is also so important. I would absolutely recommend, this is like just a tangent, but I would absolutely recommend to anyone who wants to be on a steep growth trajectory. It's as simple as polish your brand, hire a photographer so that you can present yourself in the best way and have maybe just a dozen really high quality pictures of you in a nice light, good environment that's aligned with who you are. And just having a really powerful profile picture on LinkedIn, right away, it elevates your brand. And then a couple posts with some really sharp professional pictures of you sharing perspectives, huge impact for your brand as well. It's like $500, $1,000 to hire a really good photographer. And
I've always been lazy about that. I got a half shadow picture of me in between jokes, so I get it, my man.
You're already famous. You're good.
Yeah, famous in my own mind, legend in my own mind. Weirdest place you've ever taken a sales call?
Middle of a hurricane in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
It was Tulum. Long story short, working remotely from Tulum at one point, getting smacked by a category 1 or 2 hurricane. It wasn't too bad, but basically being in a hotel room with massive winds and thunderstorms behind me and still taking the call. How about you?
Hey, last question. Ironically, funny enough, Tulum.
Oh, there you go. Seems to be
Yeah,
the place
I was on
for weird.
vacation, but this was maybe 15 years ago, so we're still very bohemian. No electricity after sunset, so it just made for a very, very unique call. He didn't believe I was in Tulum. I had to climb to a certain point they were familiar with to show them from this rock that I was actually in Tulum. Yeah, wow, small world. Okay.
Yeah. And
Who is playing? What was that?
No, and I was just gonna say the reason why I was in Tulum at the time with my wife was it was COVID, and I hadn't seen my family in over 18 months, and we really, really wanted to go to France. But since we weren't US citizens and I didn't have a green card yet, you couldn't go to Europe and come back if you had spent 15, like if you had been in Europe over the past 15 days. So what we did was we went to Europe, then we went to Mexico, worked remotely for 15 nights, and then re-entered the US.
Wow.
So,
Okay, last question.
and got smacked by a hurricane along the way.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So who is playing Corentin in the movie about your sales career? And you're a dapper, good-looking young man, so feel free to have some fun with that.
Well, I don't know. Actually, that's a good one. I'm a big fan of Matthew McConaughey, but that would be probably a little bit pretentious to say
Why
that's the
not?
guy representing me.
I'm gonna
But
coach you with him.
but that
You're
would be
helping people. Yeah, I would say it doesn't have to look like you, but as I think of the vibes that Matthew McConaughey puts off and the vibes that you've been putting off on this call, I'd probably say spot on. You're going to
yeah.
make a casting director's work very easy.
I love Matthew McConaughey because he is someone pretty raw who follows his dreams and along the way empowers others to follow theirs. And I couldn't be more aligned with that.
Yeah, man, this has been an absolute thrill. Sucks when we're out of time.
I know.
Thank you for taking the time to sit with me today.
This was awesome.
Looking forward.
Thank you for having
This
me.
was awesome. Thank you for being here. It's refreshing because I've had a few of these where you ask sales leaders to get into the weeds on what they do and how they do it, and they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. But you so eloquently described how you help these teams. So just golf clap, bravo to you, my man. It was a
Thank you.
thrill to have you on, and hope we get it to do it again soon sometime.
Yeah, totally. To be continued. In Tulum.
Yeah, that would be good. We should do a podcast from
That would be
Tulum.
fun.
But till then,
Thanks again, Joe.
pleasure's all mine.